Hello, it's wonderful to see all of you, and welcome to David and Susan as well. I have learned so much about trains in Roanoke. I grew up in Botetourt and one of those boomerangs that came back after 20 years to the area. And I knew about the railroad, but I learned names of trains, types of trains, the history of trains, all in my conversations with you, David. And uh, and it kicked us off, including a photograph from your collection of the Benton train station, which you told me about, that you grew up seeing that every day as a child. And so I wonder if for everybody, we could start where you and I started, which was growing up there in Benton with trains just a part of your everyday life, and how that set the stage, and what you didn't know about what was to come in your life.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Katie. And thank you all for being here on the nice afternoon. And I hope you have seen it. If not, though you will soon. As you can tell, Katie has really gotten into this. I think there are a few railroaders in the audience. I think I have almost turned Katie into a real foaler. But we have shared a lot of history of the railroad, and and you've said both Cindy and Katie, Susan and I do have a lot of roots in this place. I brought a nice young woman from Delaware to live here in 1965. Although I had promised her that we would have an exciting life in New York or something like that, but turned out we had an exciting life in Florida. We have my roots run even a little deeper, but Susan took to Roanoke and was deeply involved in a number of things, as many of you know well, and really adopted the Roanoke Valley, and we left here in 1990 because the railroad cut us to the Norfolk, but our heart is very much still here. We do have a long background with this museum and a number of its forms, so it is nice to be able to both to be back here and to share the random collection which Susan and I have put together as we have been interested in art and photography, works on paper, and lots of other things over time. We were talking this morning about focusing an art collection, and that's exactly what Susan and I had not. We had been interested since we grew up in the Wide Valley in the midst of an art tradition, with their plants and all of that. I grew up in Avail, which was not in the center of an arts tradition. Say that, or looking for somebody to bet here, but I don't think old time bet people would disagree with that much. But we were very, very much in the middle of a railroad tradition, and I never planned to either collect any form of arts having to do with trains, nor did I plan to work for the railroad. All of this was just luck, a happenstance, and for us, for our family, and very much good luck over time. But as Katie has said, there is a great photograph, which we can't quite identify, but we think it was done by a railroad staff photographer. And having this exhibition here in Roanoke, which I think has a lot of railroad still in it, even after all of that. We could talk about that if anybody wants to. But but this city was built on the railroad. This is big lick became Roanoke because of the fortunate crossing of the two roads here, and growing up in the edge of Bedford County and with my father's store in Vinton, I grew up surrounded by the railroad. And not only did the Virginian line, the old Virginian line, run down the river. Although our house was on a hill above that, and I could hear the trains every night. And but the Benton station, which if you haven't seen the photograph of it, is a great photograph of it in about what say 19.
About 1916, 1917.
Yeah, and when I was growing up here, it looked very much like that. I don't recognize any of the people, but it didn't look much different. Very different now, but it was right there, just down the street from my father's store, and you were just around the railroad constantly, and it became part of your bloodstream, really. And that must have happened because years later, I found myself working for the railroad. Spent over 40 years doing that with some of the folks that are here today, and we had a lot of adventures along the way. Some of them good, some of them kind of tough, but I believe that for those of us in Roanoke, there's something there, and that's why it makes sense. And I was pleased that Kay came to our house and saw a lot of railroad pictures along with many other things, but selected a group of them. My history with photography and that comes from even before working to the railroad. When I spent some time in New York as a young man working as an accountant, and I having previously met Suzu, who introduced me to art. I wandered around in galleries, and I met a man who printed prints. He was with Associated American Artists, and he did large edition prints available to the masses. It was very much kind of an post-New Deal, make art available to everyone thing, and he was working with the great artists at the time, and many of them, I was struck by the industrial black and white images, many of them prints, many of them of trains, and I just found myself attracted to it. That's Katie's point. There's something magical about this that attracts you, and it attracted me, and I began to. And we've got a large number. Katie will probably put together a show sometime of the credits for that, and there are a few of the Thomas Hart Benton Press, which we can talk about later, at connections to that. But anyway, that started it. Then by happenstance, I came back, got a job with Norfolk Western, and met Winston Lake. And there are no pictures by Winston Lake, although he is the quintessential railroad photographer of railroads in this, on purpose, because you can see a lot of Winston Lakes. They're very close to here, and some of the museum, but most of them just across the street. And I recommend that everybody do that and study the works of Winston Lake, because he is the icon in many ways of rail photography. You talk about that too with me. But I just began to see it as the railroad always had staff photographers, like the ones that did that station. I think that was staff. There were always staff photographers, and the railroad was using that for advertising. They would give away a lot of views for press, many of which the people in the audience had in their dens somewhere, and they were widely used, and it was a serious thing for the railroad. And I met the photographers at Lake. Pretty soon, I began to be interested, and I wondered. Katie came up with the word "all." I never thought of it that way, but
Well, that happened to me a question I was going to have for you, as someone who taught me so much about railroads and who knows, obviously, so much. When we were forming this exhibition, we were talking about, well, how can we rethink trains? How can we maybe look at them a little bit differently here in a community where it's such a part of the history and the part of people's lives? And I threw out that term, the technological sublime, and I said, don't need to be all curatory about it, but
Sure, good one.
but that all it means, that it means that we can look at technology and have that sense of awe, which is wonder and a little, maybe a fear, or we don't fully understand how something came to be, and thinking about the technology of the railroad and how incredible it was and changed the face of the world, certainly changed this city. And so I was curious in our talk today to go visit back when you and I were first talking about that concept. And me, an outsider, I didn't know what the 611 was at that time. I do now. But what it was like is to have someone come and have this different view on trains, and we talked about that. What it's like.
Can you all hear us?
What it was like to have somebody, what is it like to have a curator come into your collection, especially a collection so deeply personal as the one focused on trains, and say, oh, I'm seeing this. What is that like for you as a collector?
It was very interesting. It was very interesting because I don't know that Susan and I, over the years, we had our whole collecting philosophy is we kind of like things, and we see something we like and we get it if we can and we can afford it. And the early days that brought us to the arts, and that's a whole other story. But in terms photographs, I simply began, and I began with Ling, really, because Link was everywhere around the old Overgalatia, as he just made the decision to photograph the end of steam, and that was in a period when I was around, and Mr. Lake was very much around, and you knew that he made friends with people. And in particular, he made friends with Bob Claytor, who was a name familiar in Roanoke. I happened to be working for Claytor at the time, so he introduced me to Muddy's getting I knew about it, and they're compelling images, and I began to notice, traveling with Susan, looking at museums and this, that, and the other thing. You begin to notice that trains have always been a part of art. From the Impressionists hated trains and landscapes of trains, and the American painting, early American painting is full of train images and all of this. And Revere, when he came in the 1850s to do an album of beauty spots in Virginia, and I think about a dozen of the spots that he chose to put in his coffee table book in 1850 were rail stations, including the little tunnel at between here at Christiansburg, and some of the bridges. They were engineering marvels in the time. The railroad, of course, is for people in Roanoke, was on the cutting edge of technology in the early days. The railroad was the internet of its time. I now have said and been quoted that you think the internet is everything, and you don't think much of rails and transportation. If you think the internet is everything, try to move 100,000 tons of steel on the internet. And that's kind of caught on. I see that quote repeated most of all, but the railroads were the technology of the time, and I think that had a lot to do. And I think that the pictures that Katie selected reflect that. You can see the power and the innovation and how pervasive the rails are. And I adopted a philosophy that railroads were all over art. And then when I became interested in photography, I kind of developed a theory that every great photographer took a train picture. At some point, even though, unlike Lake, I mean, Lake and three or four others who are also represented in the collection are thought of as real photographers, Steinheimer, for example. But many of the works that you see up there are not photographers you think of as a train as train vehicle. They're photographers who were great photographers for other reasons, but sooner or later, whether they couldn't help themselves or what, it was beautiful. They took a train picture. So I kind of developed this, and I began to then to search for images by photographers that were known photographers, great photographers, but not necessarily for trade.
Right.
And that's what I, and when Katie came and started looking around, she said, "Oh, this is a Rep West.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a Carter Bresson. Oh, a Man Ray. Who knew that Man Ray would do a train picture?" Didn't say, but he did. And once the word got out, there are a few art collectors here, I expect. Once the word gets out in the New York commercial art thing that you're interested in something, I see you smiling, Jenny. Once the word gets out, you begin to get phone calls. And I got a phone call from a guy that I knew in a completely different thing. He said, "David, I just found something that you're really gonna want." And it was the Man Ray. That's their picture of a train. I've never seen it anywhere else. And but there it is. Man Ray did a train picture. You want to talk about, are we ready for talking about Ansel Adams?
Oh, well, we should. Yeah, we're ready to talk about all of them. That idea, that photograph is so incredible.
I mean, the example is Ansel Adams does Yosemite and the great Western scenes and all of this, and but I've heard that there was one image that had a railroad in it and it's very hard to find. There's one upstairs. You should look at it and see it. And if you're a photography connoisseur, you can kind of see this at Ansel Adams, but it doesn't have a big mountain in it or a river or a thing in it. It has a piece of railroad in it, but you can also see that it has the clouds. And I don't think Adams was as interested in the railroad as he was in what he saw, but the railroad is the integral part of that. And that's what I think the point of this is. The railroad over my lifetime and well before my lifetime, and I hope in the future it's kind of the integral part of what we all are. We grew up with it, and that's particularly important in the North Valley, where so many of our predecessors worked in those shops. And that worked in the East End shops of Schaefer's Crossing. He built the great locomotives of the day. I mean, at a time, we forget that at a point in time, Roanoke was building the best locomotives in the world. Not in Virginia, not in the East. I didn't get the best in the world were built by our grandfathers in the shops here, and so this was right on the cutting edge of something important that was going on. It's also true that some of the great early rail mergers, there's a lot of talk about what going on now, but some of the early but people from Roanoke, Stuart Saunders, and the group of people around who first put together the Norfolk and Western in Virginia, which was the coal business, and that was one of the early seminal pieces of it. And I came here because they had acquired the nickel plate and the Wabash and the Ackercat and the Youngstown, and that group with railroads that increased the Norfolk and Western presence to a Midwestern presence that turned the coal railroad into an industrial railroad, or coal and industrial railroad, and then the Southern merger put it all together that covered the but it's all part of, and Roanoke is right in the middle of it. We kind of, I don't want us to forget our heritage.
Now something.
I didn't mean to yell at that soup Sunday, but I did.
It's a good one, but that's something we talked about a lot about, what did we want this exhibition to do? That if we would look at every great photographer has a railroad picture, that we would think about all that trains appeal, but that we would think about that specifically for this community. And that, you had spoke about wanting people to feel proud, and that this exhibition, which shows trains in the railroad as a thing of beauty, as a thing of wonderment, to remind people of that wonder that was created here. And I know I talked to so many people at the steep tours, or talk with people who said, my uncle worked for the railroad, or my mother worked in the office, who feel excited to see trains thought of not only as something remarkable, but something beautiful as well. And I think your eye for photography, so many of those photographs are so beautiful. That William Garnett, that aerial one, that are so unexpected.
The picture of the train in the desert.
Yeah.
Absolutely that.
So beautiful.
The art that just something. It's a great landscape.
It is.
Landscape work, and you see that in. I love the Cartier-Bresson
Yes.
photograph that has the train in the desert and the wrecked car in front of it all. It was this guy from France. That is great for this great European photographer. Go through and he suddenly sees this image somehow, and it says a lot if you look at that individual work. But I'm just charmed that it was Cartier-Bresson, right? But not some guy from Nevada. What you say? Of course, Katie has asked me what I tried to pick one.
Yeah, I have to ask him. I said, "What's your favorite?"
Well, I can't do that. It's like asking about your favorite grandchild. I think I believe that the Stieglitz, the Hand of Man, of which there is a very unusual that image is widely known, and you see it, but it's widely known because it was in the camera work.
Yes.
The journal that was early in the it was done printed as a gravure in that journal. Those of course pieces of that journal are highly prized and sought after now, and if you have a full volume of it, hang on to it because it's priceless. But he put that there, but the one upstairs is a very unusual large version which he printed of that of that image, and that says everything about the power of industry, the power of technology and growth and movement, and I think it speaks to a lot of things.
And that photograph, so you can see it on the right-hand side of that center of that wall, Alfred Stieglitz, The Hand of Man. And it has an unusual story, too, so that it was taken from the back of a moving train in the New York City rail yard. And so I think that's such an iconic photograph taken from a train, of a train that's changing the face of the world. We have talked a lot about why photographers are attracted to trains, that photography and the railroad kind of having this technological rise in, feeding off of each other throughout time, but that artists had been attracted to different types of trains over time, or different depictions of trains. We talked about, what were people looking at in the 19th century? What are people photographing now? And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that. We talked about the beauty of, I learned what an intermodal train was in that conversation.
Saw a great one last night.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that, that depictions of trains in art have changed over time, and your reflections on why that was.
Well, I think we went to, the first, in what we're talking about in terms of the photography of trains really is reflected in the art of trains generally, which which is another exhibition we could do, and that many people have done that that sort of the art of trains, because they were originally seen, I think, really as part of the landscape. They were seeing that, and then suddenly people begin to see the power of and there's a Brett Westman photograph just of the gears of the locomotive, and you see that it's just is an expression of the technology and the power of that. And there are a couple of images. I think maybe the Shaughnessy of that great classic designed locomotive of its day. There's no picture of the 611 again because we roll up. We know what the 611 is like. Yeah, but we ought to do a 611 photography exhibit.
No ideas.
But it sort of reflected that, and then it also reflects the kind of quirky thing with the Cartier-Bresson and the Man Ray, and and you think, what the hell is that?
All right.
So there's just all of these elements in it, and Katie was leaping through. I hate to tell you this, but this comes about partly because as you all know, the Norfolk Southern moved out of Norfolk and sold the building, and I had a retirement office. But before I retired, I had photographs and pictures hanging all over the office. But even after that, I had quite a few of them. When they sold the building, I had to shrink this down, and so many of them were in storage at the how Katie came and looked through. He just went through, and this selection that you see upstairs is very much Katie, and I've been impressed with how you saw these things that we've been talking about and put it together. I just like I just see it time. And probably most of us here think, oh, we just like trains and we like train pictures. We appreciate it, but when you delve into it as a curator, like Katie and her colleagues had done, now they got interested, and you see that there really is a lot to it, and I believe that is the story of the history of railroading, and that's the history of Oaxaca. That it's appropriate for this. They've got it here.
And too, truly, it was an honor to learn so much and about those photographers and about trains. And I think that in thinking about having that exhibition here in this community too, just the power of art also to reflect and shape how we see the world, or how we think about something, or how we think about something we see every day or hear every day, like a train. And how important that preserving that visual culture is.
We should also say something in that, and maybe take question, but we should say something about the outside of the main little gallery which I think is beautifully designed. That gets a nice job hanging the art, but outside you see those Paulus Hart Benton prints that are images, and so instead of all of these, Thomas Hart Benton did a few great paintings of the railroad, which he did, and he did that because he was a great regionalist painter of his day, and he saw the power of this one of those prints. And while I was working on every great photographer train, I got the same idea about many of these, and one of the artists that the fellow that introduced me to this in New York represented was Benton. He made those the prints for Benton, and they're not. They look very much like his paintings, but they're not. They're not copies. They're separate works. And Katie, I think, was taken by all of those. All of those. They think about it. That's an example under here as an artist who's well known for something else entirely. But these are what, five?
Yes.
Five of his prints. They are five of the six images that Benton did of railroads. And we had another somewhere, but I don't know how we asked about it.
Well, we had to fit the Dale Nichols in to talk about the.
And then we had to put the Dale Nicholson, which is an interesting print of the wreck of the old 97. And if you go look at that, you'll see that the wreck of the old 97 that's taking place with snow-capped canals and all of this. And the people in this room should know that the wreck of the old 97 was he got his orders in Monroe, Virginia, saying, Steve, you're way behind time. This is not, I think 38 is old 97. You got to get it into Spencer on time. Well, that means the wreck of the old 97 took place somewhere close to Daleville. And whatever you're seeing in the print upstairs, it's not Danville, Virginia. The artist had heard the song, but he had no idea. I find that absolutely charming that he put this railroad image that was one of the most popular songs of its time, but about something that took place quite close to us right here. And the picture of it, you'd never know. I don't know what to make of that means.
Yeah, it's back to what we were saying, that train just been so large in the imagination, and that song was so famous, the wreck itself was so famous that it's been depicted, in art so many times. And I think that's just part of that iconic.
Well, if you haven't been upstairs yet, go look at that and say, that's the guy.
Turkey one.